Okay, class. Now we're going to take a look at two other examples of completing the square. Now I have written a parabola that is in standard form, and it is different from earlier examples because the leading coefficient is now negative. The leading coefficient is -1. So it is different from the examples we did before. How do we tackle this? Well, it's similar to the examples we did at the beginning. I'm going to take a look again at my first two terms, like I did before. And this time, what I'm going to do is factor the leading coefficient out. The leading coefficient is -1, and so I'm going to partial factor that only out of these two terms. When I do that, it will look like this. I factor the -1. I really don't write -1. And what would I have? I would have -1 times x squared and -1 times -12x plus 5. Take a look for a moment. What happened was this. I factored the -1, and to verify that I did it right, I can basically go back. I can say -1 times x squared gives me -x squared. -1, excuse me, times -12, negative times negative is positive. 1 times 12x is 12x, plus my 5. Very good. So now I can see that in the bracket I have a positive leading coefficient, which I already know how to do, how to complete the square. So I will do that. I will leave the negative sign outside, and I'm going to complete the square inside the bracket. My first term will be x squared. The second term 12x, like before. Now I'm going to look at half of -12, which is -6, and I'm going to square that, which is positive 36, and I'm going to add that term to complete the square. Now, if I added 36, I really need to subtract it, so my net effect is 0. And I add the 5 that I had before. So I completed the square just of the bracket. The negative leading coefficient stayed where it was. Now I'm going to take a look and realize that that is a perfect trinomial, and the way I factor this perfect trinomial is as follows. X, I'm going to leave my negative there from before, x, negative sign of the middle, square root of the first, which is 6, which incidentally is the 6 we had before, x minus 6 squared. That took care of that. I still have the negative 36 that is affected by this -1 plus the 5. Now I'm going to remove this bracket. Remember, I have, although it's not written explicitly, although it's not written explicitly, I have a -1 here. So I'm going to multiply -1 times my bracket. The bracket is a whole unit, so the -1 multiplies the whole bracket. I do nothing else with whatever is inside. And then I multiply the -1 times -36. Negative times negative will be positive. And I have removed that bracket. I add the 5, and I'm almost finished. You can see that all I have to do next is simplify these two terms. And my final version will be -x minus 6 squared plus 41. That is my parabola in vertex form. The leading coefficient stayed the same, -1. Now I know that the vertex is at 6, 41 with a step pattern of negative 1, negative 3, negative 5, which tells me that the parabola opens down. One more example. Begin the same way. I take a look at my first two terms, and I'm going to factor the negative 1 out of those two. We call these partial factoring. So I'm going to take negative 1. I don't write the leading coefficient of 1. I could if it was easier. I'm just going to leave it like that for this time. And I realized that I would have x squared plus 2x as the other factor, and plus my 15. I can always verify that I did this right by expanding this back. So I think negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times positive 2x is negative 2x. And so I realized that I did it right. Now I'm going to complete the square of my bracket because my leading coefficient now is positive 1 inside the bracket. I leave the negative sign out and I begin completing the square. X squared plus 2x, half of 2 is 1. 1 squared equals 1. So I add 1. And of course, if I add it, I have to subtract it. And I have my positive 15. Now I realize that these three terms now are a perfect trinomial. So I'm going to factor those three terms and write it as a binomial square. Square root of x squared is x, square root of 1 is 1, sign of the middle is positive, x plus 1 squared. I still have my minus 1 there, so I'm going to leave it there inside this square bracket. This perhaps is the only tricky section of this question, and then the plus 15. Now I'm going to remove the bracket by multiplying my negative 1 times each of these terms inside the square bracket. So negative 1 times my bracket is just going to be negative x plus 1 squared. The bracket is a whole unit, and then negative 1 times negative 1 is going to be positive 1 plus 15. And my last step, negative x plus 1 squared. Simplify these to positive 16. My vertex then is at negative 1, comma, positive 16 with a step pattern of negative 1, negative 3, negative 5. The parabola opens down just like we knew from the beginning. And of course, we're happy about that.
Oh yes, I can definitely do this.